Back in 1849, British archaeologist Austin Henry Layard was excavating the remnants of ancient Nineveh, located in present-day northern Iraq. Like other Victorian adventurers, he sought out grand artifacts, towering statues, intricate stone carvings, treasures destined to dazzle visitors at the British Museum. Yet what emerged from the soil proved infinitely more profound, even if it seemed unremarkable initially. He unearthed thousands of fragmented clay tablets, most no bigger than a hand's breadth, etched with delicate wedge-like impressions formed in the soft clay. Many lay in pieces, others partial at best. To the untrained eye, they resembled mere debris. Some laborers even packed them around the flashier discoveries headed for London. It wasn't until decades later that scholars pieced together their secrets, reshaping our grasp of humanity's earliest narratives, how ancient minds grappled with their place in the world, and a timeless puzzle that lingers, our origins, and that nagging sense that our very being might have been an anomaly. Tonight, we plunge into one of humanity's most ancient tales, a creation epic that predates the Bible by over a millennium. It revolves around the Anunnaki, divine entities from Sumerian and Babylonian lore, who, the texts claim, fashion humans for a precise role. But those same accounts reveal the gods' growing dread of their creation, not due to frailty, but raw power, a flaw in our blueprint, an unforeseen twist the scribes labeled an accident, endowed us with potentials the Anunnaki hadn't anticipated, potentials that imperiled the deities themselves. To set the record straight from the outset, these tablets are authentic artifacts. They're housed in institutions worldwide: the British Museum, the Louvre, Baghdad's Iraq Museum, the University of Pennsylvania Museum. Decades of experts in Assyriology, the discipline devoted to ancient Mesopotamian tongues and societies, have deciphered them. Their findings appear in respected scholarly publications. The content undergoes intense scrutiny, comparison with other sources, and examination akin to that of any pivotal historical record. Our exploration draws not from online myths, but from genuine cuneiform inscriptions, verified scholarly interpretations, and digs conducted over 170 years. Views differ. We'll explore splits between conventional academia and bolder hypotheses, but the foundational documents are as solidly attested as any relic from antiquity. So let's trace it back to the origins, not ours, but theirs. The Sumerians arose in southern Mesopotamia, the lush region cradled by the Tigris and Euphrates in modern southern Iraq. Around 4,500 BCE, they founded some of the planet's initial cities. By 3,500 BCE, they pioneered cuneiform, the dawn of scripted communication, by imprinting reed tools into moist clay to etch those iconic wedges. These marks captured their epics, regulations, commerce, and myths, enduring millennia. The Sumerians were innovators par excellence. They devised or refined writing, the wheel, the plow, advanced irrigation, city-states, formal legal codes, education, archives, and a base 60 math system still embedded in our lives: 60 seconds per minute, 60 minutes per hour, 360 degrees in a circle. All Sumerian legacies. Their celestial monitoring was equally advanced, charting planetary and stellar paths with accuracy Europe wouldn't rival for ages. But our focus here is their spiritual framework. The Sumerians bequeathed a rich mythological corpus that portrays human origins with eerie precision, vivid detail, and echoes that feel eerily contemporary. Per their writings, we weren't shaped by one omnipotent deity voicing existence into being. We were crafted, deliberately engineered, purpose-built, and the method, as the old writers depict it, strikingly resembles modern notions of genetic engineering. The primary account of creation shows up in various ancient writings, though the fullest rendition stems from a work called the Atrahasis Epic. Quote, "Zero, an Akkadian term translating to extraordinarily wise, serves as the name of the human protagonist in the tale. The earliest surviving versions of this epic date back to approximately 1700 BCE from the Old Babylonian era, yet the narrative itself probably originates much earlier, rooted in Sumerian lore that could stretch back at least a millennium further. Scholars first spotted and deciphered the Atrahasis tablets during the late 1800s and early 1900s. It took until 1965, however, for Assyriologist W. G. Lambert and A. R. Millard to release a thorough edition complete with translation and analysis. Issued by Oxford University Press, their publication continues to stand as a cornerstone in Mesopotamian studies. Over the years, more fragments have surfaced, prompting fresh translations and analyses by experts like Stephanie Dalley, Benjamin Foster, and several others. Now, let's dive into the core of the Atrahasis epic. Prior to the emergence of humans, the deities handled every aspect of keeping the world running. The epic outlines a divine pecking order. The mighty Anunnaki gods wielded power and issued commands, while the subordinate Igigi deities carried out the grunt work. These lesser gods excavated irrigation channels, deepened riverbeds, and upkept the vital water systems supporting the gods' domain. The toil proved grueling and perpetual. The story portrays the Igigi laboring for a span termed 40 years, likely symbolizing an immense stretch of time in this godly context. The drudgery was merciless. They had to carve out waterways, scour the Tigris River, and dredge the Euphrates. Worn down to their limits, the Igigi finally revolted. This uprising ranks among the most intense episodes in Mesopotamian ancient literature. Driven past their breaking point, the lesser gods torched their implements and advanced on Enlil's residence, the head deity. They encircled his home under cover of darkness. Spotting the approach, Enlil's gatekeeper bolted the entrance and roused him. The supreme god panicked. He summoned Anu, ruler of the heavens, and Enki, deity of insight and sweet waters. The high gods convened in assembly. Enlil pushed for harsh retribution against the insurgents, but Enki, ever the shrewd strategist, suggested an alternative path. Instead of quelling the revolt by force, why not tackle its underlying issue? The gods endured hardship due to the overwhelming burden. So, invent a fresh species to shoulder the workload. Fashion a laborer. Bring forth humankind. The assembly consented. At this point, the epic turns truly remarkable. The Atrahasis tale, along with connected Sumerian accounts, depicts human origins not as mere godly fiat, but as a methodical operation. It details precise stages, ingredients, figures involved, and even glitches that cropped up along the way. Such meticulousness sets it apart from subsequent creation legends. It feels more like a record of real events, or at least folklore etched in the minds of ancient folk, or a preserved memory from millennia past, conveyed in the vernacular of that era. Central to the process is a goddess known by names like Nintu, Ninhursag, Mamie, or Bilet Ili, varying by source and custom. Portrayed as the fertility deity, progenitor of divinities, and master of Genesis, she plays a pivotal role. In the Atrahasis, Enki guides her through the method. Though she doesn't operate in isolation, Enki supplies the blueprint, the recipe, the blueprint. The goddess brings the artistry, the technique, the practical know-how. United, they craft a novel entity. Clay forms the starting point, a staple in nearly every Mesopotamian origin myth. the gods blended together. Yet clay by itself falls short. It's mere dirt, lifeless matter. Something vital must spark it, infuse vitality, endow the smarts and stamina the gods demand. That vital spark proves divine. Per the Atrahasis, a deity meets its end through sacrifice. Named Geshtui, this god embodies cleverness. The moniker holds meaning. In Sumerian, it ties to perception, comprehension, and sagacity. No arbitrary victim here. This was a figure linked directly to intellect and awareness. Mingling the god's blood and tissue with the clay brings the essence to life. The epic explains that the god's flesh and blood infuse the being with Atmu, the vital force. Thus, a sentient creature arises, ensuring the divine imprint endures. Let life infuse it. Consider the implications here. A cognizant divine entity perishes. Its vital fluids and tissue merge with terrestrial clay. What emerges is a hybrid form bearing the core vitality, the Atmu, or soul, from its godly origin. The intelligence possessed by this newly formed entity stems from the godly substance integrated into its formation. The ancient authors wouldn't have conceived of this in contemporary scientific jargon, yet the story's framework, merging hereditary elements from one organism with a tangible base to produce a fresh life form that retains passed-down attributes, carries a strikingly evocative quality. Numerous experts, especially within established scholarly circles, view this solely as legend. The clay symbolizes humanity's mortal aspect, while the godly blood signifies the flicker of awareness or the spirit. It's essentially a religious assertion regarding people's blended essence, half terrestrial, half celestial. Such a reading holds solid merit and dominates most academic publications, though certain researchers highlight the precise procedural elements in the writings. The act of Genesis unfolds not as one grand miracle, but as an elaborate sequence requiring particular substances, specialized knowledge, repeated efforts, assessments of quality, and fixes for failures. Such granularity stands out in contrast to standard mythical tales, which often paint origins in sweeping, emblematic terms. These Sumerian records resemble engineering logs cloaked in mythic phrasing. We press on with the sequence, as the particulars are key. Once the blood and clay combine, the account details Nintu shaping 14 portions of the mixture. She arranges 7 to the right and 7 to the left, inserting a brick in the center. This arrangement carries deliberate weight. Those 14 segments form the initial batch of humankind, 7 males and 7 females. The central brick evokes the birth brick, an actual artifact from ancient Mesopotamian deliveries, a ceremonial platform upon which women position themselves amid childbirth pains. The inscription weaves human origins into the idiom of gestation and procreation, yet the Genesis extends beyond that point. The Atrahasis saga outlines the aftermath of this initial human cohort, marking a pivotal shift relevant to our discussion this evening. For the humans once brought into existence, strayed from the deity's expectations. They carried out their duties, excavating channels, upholding irrigation systems, and executing the toil the Agigi had shunned. However, they engaged in another activity: proliferation. Their population surged, and with it came uproar. The narrative employs the Akkadian term rigmu, denoting tumult, racket, or disruption. Humanity's swelling ranks and clamor ascended to the skies, so perturbing Enlil that sleep eluded him. The uproar so irked the supreme deity that he resolved to curtail their populace. At face value, it appears a straightforward tale of a peevish divinity tormented by raucous mortals. Yet interpreters have long contested the true implication of this noise here. Does it signify actual sound, or stand as allegory for overpopulation, progress in technology, societal formation, self-governance, cultural evolution, cognitive prowess, strategic foresight, debate, innovation, and claims to sovereignty. Thorkild Jacobson, a preeminent Assyriologist of the past century, proposed that the din embodies the escalating sophistication and self-reliance of human society. People weren't merely toiling, they were fostering traditions, dialects, communal frameworks, inventions. They evolved past mere instruments into a full-fledged culture, and that prospect alarmed the divine council. Ponder the analogy. You engineer a labor force for manual tasks. You imbue them with sufficient intellect for efficient performance. But that intellect doesn't halt at drudgery. It proliferates. It spawns communication, aesthetics, faith, machinery, class divisions, governance. The laborers transform into a community. They gain might. They pose as possible adversaries. Herein lies the hereditary flaw, not a malfunction in utility, for humans operated as engineered, adept at channeling water, tilling soil, erecting edifices. The flaw resided in the potency of the intellect derived from the sacrificed deity, that sacred infusion blended with the clay, too vigorous. It didn't merely facilitate toil, it sparked invention, inquisitiveness, drive, introspection. It ignited all that defines human identity, and none of it aligned with the blueprint. In the Atrahasis tale, Enlil counters by diminishing mankind via successive disasters. Plague strikes first, followed by drought, then starvation. On each occasion, Enki covertly alerts his preferred mortal, Atrahasis, aiding his endurance. Each scheme by Enlil to dwindle the species falters as one individual, armed with godly insight, navigates survival. The ultimate calamity arrives as the deluge. Enlil opts for total annihilation through a cataclysmic inundation. This flood legend precedes the Noah narrative in the Bible by more than a millennium. The similarities are evident. A virtuous figure cautioned by a deity. A vessel constructed according to precise measurements. Creatures loaded onto it. A deluge that wipes out all life. Avians sent out to spot dry ground. An offering presented once the waters subside. The deity who inhales the pleasing aroma and shows mercy. Such elements aren't mere flukes. The scriptural tale of the deluge was undoubtedly shaped by the Mesopotamian tale, familiar across the ancient Near East. Scholars confirm this after George Smith's groundbreaking 1872 deciphering of the Deluge tablet from the Epic of Gilgamesh, sparking widespread excitement in Victorian Britain. Returning to the Anunnaki and their apprehension, post-deluge, with humanity enduring against the gods' determined assault, the accounts outline a revised dynamic. The deities acknowledged they couldn't eradicate humans outright. People proved invaluable, indispensable, and remarkably tough. Rather than annihilation, the gods enforced restrictions. The Atrahasis epic outlines the formation of infertile female groups, the introduction of the child-stealing demon Paku, the creation of priestess orders barred from motherhood. These represent mechanisms for curbing population growth, couched in mythic language, yet mirroring actual societal structures from ancient Mesopotamia. The underlying point is evident. The gods engineered humans with defined abilities, yet those abilities overstepped boundaries. The godly essence infused into human makeup was excessively potent, versatile, and inventive. People evolved into an unforeseen force, not flawed, but overly proficient. The gods' reaction involved dread, a bid for extinction, and then a tense compromise featuring enduring curbs on human possibilities. Now, let's expand our lens to examine ancient Mesopotamian insights into the physical environment. The creation myths didn't arise in isolation. They sprang from a society remarkably advanced in scientific pursuits. The Sumerians, followed by the Akkadians and Babylonians, amassed profound expertise in astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and farming. Their celestial tracking allowed eclipse forecasts with notable precision. Their numeral framework incorporated early algebraic ideas absent from European math for millennia. Tablets from Babylonian scribes circa 1800 BCE solve problems akin to quadratic equations. They computed the square root of 2 with 6 decimal precision. Though their healing manuals blend spells with practical remedies, they reveal authentic medical acumen. Healers in Mesopotamia recognized targeted healing effects in various herbs. They performed operations, mended fractures, and kept thorough patient logs. Texts on diagnosing ailments from Ashurbanipal's Nineveh library in the 7th century BCE, rooted in far earlier lore, detail illness signs that contemporary doctors can occasionally pinpoint. This backdrop illuminates the mental framework surrounding the origin story's development. These weren't idle yarns spun by firelight. They came from inhabitants of complex city-states, boasting script, academies, archives, and a legacy of meticulous scrutiny. While laced with religious and metaphorical layers, their legends safeguard communal recollections, past occurrences filtered via narrative, and insights into nature expressed through their era's idiom. Let's probe further into the key documents detailing human origins and the godly unease they sparked. The Enuma Elish, known as the Babylonian Genesis poem, offers yet another take on humankind's beginnings. Likely penned around 1100 BCE, though building on ancient roots, this work was chanted yearly at the Babylonian New Year's rite. It recounts how the mighty Marduk vanquishes the chaos goddess Tiamat and fashions the cosmos from her remains. Regarding human formation, Marduk declares he'll craft a primitive being called man, tasked with the gods' labors to grant them repose. Once more, the intent is straightforward, humans to labor for the divine. Yet the Enuma Elish introduces a compelling twist. For humanity's making, the insurgent deity Kingu, who backed Tiamat, is put to death. His blood forms mankind. This echoes the Atrahasis account with the slain god Geshtu. But here, the victim is overtly a dissenter, a god rebelling against the ruling hierarchy. The suggestion is intriguing. Human essence derives from a traitor. The instinct to resist, to challenge power, to oppose the status quo flows in our veins, woven into our blueprint from a celestial forebear who personified such traits. Could this be the origin of that divine apprehension? Not simply due to the clamor of human expansion or sheer numbers, but from realizing that the sacred essence fashioned into our being held an inherent spark of revolt, that the very intellect and determination rendering us effective laborers also empowered us to confront the deities head-on. The Sumerian composition called Enkian Ninma provides another intriguing take on the Genesis tale. Notably, it features a striking episode. After forming the initial people, the gods indulge in revelry and attempt further creations, only to yield imperfect outcomes. Enki and Ninma alternate in crafting entities plagued by imperfections, those sightless, immobile, incontinent, or infertile. The narrative frames this as a rivalry between the pair, each devising a flawed form to baffle the other into admitting its uselessness. This segment stands out for multiple compelling aspects. Firstly, it portrays creation as an experimental endeavor where not all efforts yield flawless products. Some emerge defective. This idea aligns profoundly with contemporary views on genetics and bioengineering, in which mutations, mishaps, and unforeseen deviations are integral to evolution. Secondly, it hints that even the gods lacked complete mastery over their inventive efforts. They might establish core guidelines, blend appropriate elements, and adhere to protocols, yet variability persisted. The act of bringing life into existence proved unpredictable. Such unpredictability mirrors what we'd anticipate in biological manipulation and genetic mixing, where outcomes hinge on variables beyond even the savviest expert's grasp. Thirdly, and crucially for our exploration, it conveys that forging viable thinking humans, the ones who truly functioned, was a stroke of luck, not a guaranteed result. Out of countless potential yields, mostly marred by faults, the gods succeeded in generating not just workable beings, but ones that exceeded expectations in prowess. The true misstep lay not with the defective variants, but with these triumphs: overly adept, overly shrewd, overly autonomous, mirroring the gods far too closely. Now turning to what the ancient records reveal about the post-deluge era. For the saga extends beyond celestial dread and mortal annihilation into territory far more captivating: the deities' endeavors to regulate their handiwork. In the wake of the deluge, per diverse Mesopotamian lore, the dynamic between divinities and mortals underwent a redefinition. The gods refrained from eradicating humankind, reliant as they were on mortal toil and adoration. Mortals in turn stood no chance against the gods, who wielded dominion over nature's core powers. Thus, a fresh pact took shape, enshrined in writings that outline the inception of monarchy, clergy, and the temple-state frameworks defining Mesopotamian society. The Sumerian king list, a cornerstone artifact from antiquity, opens with a striking declaration. When kingship descended from heaven, it proceeds to enumerate rulers presiding over absurdly extended eras, pre-flood, often spanning tens of thousands of years, then shifts to post-flood sovereigns whose tenures shorten progressively toward plausibility. This document has drawn thorough analysis from experts, including Thor Jacobson's definitive 1939 edition and later works by figures like Potstein Keller. Interpretations of the pre-flood monarchs and their vast durations abound. Conventional academics typically see them as mythic, evoking a legendary epoch of semi-divine governance over the world. Fringe investigators occasionally regard them as indicators of extraterrestrial or mixed-origin entities boasting lifespans well beyond ordinary bounds. What captivates us here is the shift. Pre-flood, rains stretch across a millennia. Afterward, they plummet swiftly. It suggests a profound transformation coincided with the cataclysm, as though the essence of authority, or maybe the ruler's very makeup, underwent a shift. This echoes the Atral's account, where the aftermath imposes fresh curbs on human capacities. If those early kings embodied a tighter link to godly lineage, the diminishing spans could signify its steady erosion across lineages. This ties into a wider motif in Mesopotamian writings, the notion that humans once possessed faculties that were subsequently curtailed or confined. The Sumerian piece, termed the Eridu Genesis, recounts an age when mortals coexisted with gods, when the divide between sacred and earthly was far more permeable. Additional accounts depict a progressive divide, an expanding gap between the deities and humankind, where the gods pulled back from personal interactions and relayed messages via go-betweens, via religious officials, via visions in sleep, via signs revealed in the entrails of ritual offerings. This retreat is occasionally portrayed as the deity's own volition, an intentional move to step away from an invention that proved burdensome. Yet it might also be viewed as stemming from apprehension. The gods didn't simply depart out of weariness with mortals. They withdrew, because remaining near a creation growing ever more potent and erratic posed risks. Let's hold for a moment and reflect on the historical backdrop. After all, the narratives we've explored aren't mere ethereal concepts. They originate from concrete locations, defined eras, and distinct societal frameworks that we can investigate. The settlement of Eridu in southern Iraq is regarded by numerous experts as the planet's earliest urban center, or among the very first. The Sumerian king list identifies Eridu as the initial site where royal authority came down from the skies. Digs at Eridu, led by Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd during the 1940s, uncovered layers of shrines constructed successively atop one another, reaching back to at least 5,400 BCE. The most ancient structure was a modest edifice, no bigger than a chamber. Across generations, it was reconstructed repeatedly, each iteration grander and more intricate, evolving into a vast stepped tower ensemble. This progression of sanctuaries at Eridu symbolizes one of the most enduring, unbroken spiritual lineages in recorded history, enduring more than 3,000 years. The divinity honored there was Enki, the very figure from the origin tales who engineered humankind and covertly shielded us against the destructive schemes of fellow gods. Enki's sanctuary at Eridu bore the name Abzu, derived from the subterranean sea of sweet water that the Sumerians thought lay under the ground. Enki ruled the Abzu, commanded pure waters, and embodied wisdom, artisanship, and sorcery. Notably, he was tied to the mysteries of existence itself. Legends about Enki repeatedly link him to the power of generating and altering life forms, drawing on insights exclusive to him among the pantheon. Findings from Eridu and other primordial Sumerian locales reveal a society that advanced at an astonishing pace. In a brief span, southern Mesopotamia shifted from dispersed hamlets to intricate city-states boasting grand edifices, script, class divisions, expert workmanship, far-reaching commerce, and advanced faith systems. Archaeologists have long found this swift evolution intriguing, typically attributing it to the bounty of the region's landscape. The rich silt plain flanked by twin rivers yielding the crop abundance essential for city dwellers. The Sumerians, however, offered another rationale. They attributed civilized progress to bestowals from the divine. In particular, they spoke of sacred endowments termed the Mi, a notion without a precise English counterpart. The Mi functioned as the core tenets or schematics of societal order. They encompassed realms from monarchy to clergy, from veracity to journeys to the netherworld, from melody to the skills of the writer. These Mi form the foundational elements of refined existence. Sumerian lore holds that the gods fashioned the Mi and bestowed them upon mortals, at times with hesitation. The tale of Inanna and Enki recounts the goddess Inanna's journey to Eridu to claim the Mi from Enki. She intoxicates him. He hands over the Miye and she carries them to her home in Uruk. Upon sobering and grasping his error, Enki dispatches monsters to reclaim them, yet she eludes capture. Scholars see this yarn as mirroring genuine rivalries between Eridu and Uruk in history. Beyond that, it echoes the wider motif of celestial wisdom passing to humans, whether by intent, mishap, or oversight, and invariably yielding outcomes beyond the gods' foresight. Such dissemination of lore, such imparting of godly prowess, ties straight into our key motif. The Anunnaki formed humans using a god's vital essence. That essence held intellect, awareness, and potential. But it evidently bore more, an unforeseen trait the deities overlooked. The potential for self-directed evolution, the knack for expanding on gifts received, for acquiring skills, advancing, inventing what the gods never conceived, and thus emerging as originators unto themselves. Now, let's shift to another collection of writings that sheds light on this idea from a fresh perspective. The Epic of Gilgamesh, humanity's earliest preserved literary masterpiece. Gilgamesh served as ruler of Uruk, likely a genuine figure from history who reigned circa 2700 BCE. Although tales of Gilgamesh evolved and were polished across numerous generations, the canonical edition of the Epic, the version familiar to most, was assembled by a scholarly priest called Sinleki Unini sometime around 1200 BCE. Earlier Sumerian accounts of specific Gilgamesh episodes, however, trace back to the Third Dynasty of Ur, circa 2100 BCE. The narrative centers on Gilgamesh, portrayed as two-thirds divine and one-third mortal, a proportion that carries deep meaning. It points to an ancient custom of blending godly and earthly lineages with varying degrees of each. Gilgamesh isn't wholly a god, nor entirely human. He dwells in the liminal realm between, and his tale revolves around the inherent conflict of that existence. Renowned for his might, hubris, and unease, he burdens his subjects. In response, the deities craft Enkidu, a savage figure dwelling with beasts, utterly ignorant of urban ways. Enkidu's initiation into society occurs via a sacred courtesan who exposes him to staples like bread, ale, garments, and communal norms. This shift spans 7 days, after which the creatures that once roamed with him shun his presence. He is evolved into an altered state, fully human. Enkidu's shift from untamed beast to cultured individual, sparked by newfound awareness, echoes the overarching tale of origins, bestowing intellect, sentience, and societal wisdom irrevocably alters one's essence. Such change proves irreversible. Once Enkidu grasps the essence of humanity, reverting to his feral past becomes impossible. The insight itself enacts the metamorphosis. Gilgamesh and Enkidu forge a profound bond, friends, allies, near kin without shared blood. As partners, they venture forth on quests, journeying to the Cedar Woods to defeat the protector Humbaba, then dispatching the heavenly bull dispatched by the deity Ishtar. They challenge the divine order time and again, escaping consequences for a spell. Yet the gods observe closely, gripped by dread. Following the slaying of the heavenly bull, the deities convene. Retribution demands a sacrifice for these transgressions. They select Enkidu over Gilgamesh, the latter shielded somewhat by his partial godhood. Enkidu, molded from earth and enlivened by celestial intent, exists as the god's solution to a dilemma, yet he sickens and perishes. Gilgamesh, facing death's reality head-on for the first time, crumbles. He forsakes his rule, dons hides of beasts, and roams desolate lands in pursuit of unending vitality. At last, he encounters Utnapishtim, the flood-surviving Mesopotamian equivalent of Noah, whom the gods blessed with eternal life. Utnapishtim informs Gilgamesh that such perpetuity lies beyond the reach of mere mortals. The divine have claimed it exclusively. This marks humanity's profoundest constraint. Mortals may possess wit, ingenuity, valor, bravery, and emotions like affection and sorrow, but endless existence remains off-limits. It's the ultimate barrier the gods erected against offspring, who had already breached so many limits. This motif of deities denying humans immortality while bestowing all other gifts recurs in various Mesopotamian lore. In the Adapa legend, a wise man fashioned by Enki ascends to the heavens after unintentionally slighting the divine. Anu, lord of the skies, presents Adapa with the sustenance and elixir of life, promising agelessness. Yet Enki had cautioned him against consuming any divine offerings, claiming they were fatal fare and drink. Adapa declines, forfeiting immortality for all humankind. Did Enki safeguard Adapa, or did he deliberately block the path to godlike parity? The account leaves room for ambiguity, fueling scholarly disputes for more than 100 years. Certain interpreters see Enki as sincerely shielding his handiwork. Others view him as upholding the last divide separating deities from mortals. Consider the trees of knowledge and life. Humanity partakes of the former, attaining discernment, intellect, and moral insight. But prior to reaching the latter for immortality, the divine banishes them from paradise. The resemblance to Mesopotamian stories is uncanny. Awareness is bestowed or seized. Eternal life is withheld. Across both heritages, the gods react with unease to this enlightenment. In Genesis post-fruit consumption, the deity declares, "See, the man has become like one of us, aware of good and evil. What if he reaches out, takes from the tree of life, eats, and lives forever?" Here lies an overt admission of apprehension. With knowledge secured, humans might seize immortality as well, achieving full divinity, an outcome the powers above deem unacceptable. The concept of a genetic flaw in Mesopotamian lore and the forbidden fruit in biblical accounts essentially narrate the identical tale at their foundational level. A being crafted by design surpasses the boundaries set by its maker. The maker, taken aback, enforces restrictions, yet the being endures, reduced in stature but uneliminated, harboring the very potential that instilled fear in its creator. Now, let's turn to insights from contemporary genetics and evolutionary biology regarding the true emergence of human intellect. For the scientific account brings its own unexpected twists, enigmas, and compelling echoes of those age-old tales. Modern humans, known as Homo sapiens, first appeared in Africa about 300,000 years ago, with our ancestral line extending back millions of years via prior hominid forms like Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Australopithecus, and further predecessors. Human intelligence evolved incrementally in certain ways, yet in others, it reveals baffling surges that researchers continue to unravel. The human brain stands out as remarkable, boasting around 86 billion neurons, each linked to thousands more, forming a web of immense intricacy. Compared to what you'd anticipate for a primate of our physique, the human brain is roughly 3 times bigger. This growth, termed encephalization, unfolded swiftly by evolutionary standards, with major expansions in brain volume across the past 2 million years. However, sheer size doesn't fully account for human smarts. Neanderthals possessed brains equal to or exceeding ours in scale. What sets the human brain apart lies in its architecture, especially the expanded prefrontal cortex, which handles foresight, choices, social interactions, and conceptual reasoning. In humans, this prefrontal cortex is notably outsized relative to other primates, featuring denser neural linkages and more elaborate firing patterns. The genetic underpinnings of human brain growth draw keen scrutiny. Various genes stand out as pivotal. ASPM, which controls brain volume, evolved swiftly along the human branch. Microcephalin, tied to cerebral maturation, bears signs of robust positive selection in our recent history. FOXP2, often dubbed the language gene despite the simplification, contributes to speech and linguistic skills. Yet the most captivating genetic revelation concerns HAR1, or Human Accelerated Region 1. This DNA segment remained virtually static for hundreds of millions of years throughout vertebrate history, from chickens to chimpanzees. Then, within the human line, it transformed abruptly. A total of 18 alterations arose in a sequence that had seen just 2 shifts over the 300 million years dividing chickens from chimpanzees. An event targeted this gene uniquely in our ancestry, prompting drastic shifts following eons of constancy. HAR1 functions during cerebral formation, particularly in the neocortex from the 7th to 19th week of gestation. The neocortex drives advanced mental processes, the traits that set humans apart from fellow creatures. Researchers are still probing HAR1's precise role. Still, its swift evolution exclusive to humans and its influence on brain formation position it as a landmark in probing our origins. This discovery captivates on its merits alone. But view it against the backdrop of ancient stories. Sumerian accounts portray humankind's origin as infusing godly wisdom into a corporeal form. Today's genetics reveals our intellect as stemming from abrupt, atypical tweaks to targeted DNA after prolonged stasis. The old tales depict a deliberate act. Science outlines a spontaneous one, yet both tales converge on a core truth. Our forebears underwent a swift, profound boost in mental prowess, and that leap, in essence, felt irregular, unforeseen, diverging from the steady shifts typical of evolution. To clarify, I'm not claiming Sumerian origin myths as factual records of alien genetic tinkering. The established scientific view of human evolution, driven by natural selection, genetic drift, mate choice, and ecological forces, rests on solid proof and needs no otherworldly input. That said, the framework of the mythic tale mirrors that of the empirical one in intriguing ways. Both feature a sudden sharp pivot within a brief span. Both center on intellect and mental advancement. In each scenario, the outcome produced a creature whose abilities appeared to go well beyond the essentials for mere existence. This aspect merits closer examination. The intellect of humans is often excessively advanced for the challenges our forebears encountered on the African plains. Composing orchestral masterpieces or solving complex math proofs isn't required to forage for fruit or evade wild animals. Crafting verses isn't essential for locating streams. Pondering the universe's mysteries isn't necessary to construct a simple dwelling. Nevertheless, people possess the talent for all these pursuits. Our mental faculties surpass the demands of everyday sustenance by a wide margin. Experts in evolutionary biology offer several theories to account for this, such as mate selection, where smarts evolved as a desirable trait in partners, or group rivalry, in which mastering intricate social dynamics spurred brain power growth. While these ideas hold water, the reality persists. Our mental prowess doesn't quite fit the scope of our natural habitat. It feels as though we were crafted for ambitions greater than just enduring. Drawing from the phrasing in those old writings, let's circle back to Mesopotamia and delve into a fresh angle of the tale. The bond between the Anunnaki and their handiwork, as outlined in accounts of godly rule and sacred shrines. Post-deluge, per Mesopotamian lore, the deities instituted monarchy to oversee humankind. The ruler acted as a bridge, linking the divine and mortal realms, selected by the gods to uphold harmony. The temple stood as the deity's earthly abode, overseen by clergy who performed regular ceremonies to nourish, attire, and tend the idol statues embodying the god's essence. This arrangement fulfilled two roles. It structured society to align with the god's agendas, funneling people's efforts and assets into worship. At the same time, it restrained humanity, steering their drive and aspirations into God-overseen frameworks. Monarchy channeled human drive and structuring skills into forging empires, waging wars, and executing communal endeavors that advanced sacred goals. The temple network guided intellect toward ceremonies, faith doctrines, and preserving the universal balance as the deities envisioned it. The Sumerian and Babylonian temple-based economy was vast, Shrines controlled expansive lands, hired multitudes of laborers, oversaw farming outputs, handled global commerce, and functioned as hubs for education and writing. The temple formed the city's core, with urban life revolving around it. Within this setup, human progress aimed to fulfill celestial aims. People's vitality was captured and guided through God-created systems. Yet, containing that human vigor proves tricky. It always finds ways to break free. The very cognition that rendered humans effective shrine attendants also empowered them to wonder about the purpose of their toil. The structuring prowess that enabled temple construction similarly allowed assembling forces that defied godly rule. The ingenuity behind godly praises also birthed writings that probed divine equity. A striking instance is the Babylonian piece called Ludlul Bel Nemeki, occasionally dubbed the Babylonian Job, likely composed circa 1200 BCE. It portrays a virtuous individual enduring profound hardship despite devoted service to the gods. He interrogates godly fairness, disputes the notion that compliance guarantees benefits, and voices the core inequity of a regime where deities require devotion without consistently offering safety or abundance in return. This precise mindset is what the ancient records imply the gods dreaded, not mere clamor or swelling numbers, but the power for analytical reflection, for contesting the status quo, for disputing the idea that gods merit loyalty solely due to their status. Here lies the genetic flaw manifesting. The smarts meant to turn humans into efficient laborers also let them perceive their own subjugation. Now turning to tangible proof of Mesopotamian insights that outstrip expectations given their tech era, consider the Babylonian celestial records, especially the astronomical logs kept from roughly 750 BCE forward, which feature meticulously detailed sightings. Babylonian stargazers forecasted lunar occultations with impressive reliability. They monitored the paths of the 5 naked-eye planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and anticipated their locations far into the future. Within their system, they crafted computational frameworks for celestial paths that displayed notable complexity. The Mulopin tablets from roughly 1000 BCE, though incorporating far older observations, list out stars and constellations, outline the sun and moon's routes across the heavens, and offer mathematical guidelines for forecasting celestial events. Certain details in these records are so accurate that today's scientists rely on them to refine timelines of the past. Far beyond mere skywatching, this expertise had real-world applications. It guided farming schedules, religious celebrations, and even key choices by rulers, all tied to careful sky monitoring. Yet its role went further, revealing an ordered universe where heavenly bodies moved in reliable ways, allowing sharp human minds to spot those rhythms and harness them for foresight. Such foresight equated to influence. Foreseeing an eclipse, for instance, grants insights beyond the common folk's grasp, a wisdom that borders on the sacred. Babylonian temple scholars, in effect, were accessing the very insights ancient writings credit to the deities. By grasping the rules shaping the universe, interpreting the sky's script, and unraveling creation's workings, they bridged mortal and divine realms. The gods took note per the lore, as Mesopotamian tales often express unease over mortals' swelling wisdom. Take the Tower of Babel account, found in both biblical and Mesopotamian forms. People unite to erect a structure touching the divine realm. The gods, or God, varying by telling, step in, not due to structural flaws, but because unified human effort poses a real danger. Quote 3 declares the sacred proclamation in Genesis. The fix? Disperse the people and muddle their speech, shattering the unity that fueled their threat. This motif of divine meddling to curb human might through shared knowledge and teamwork recurs in old writings worldwide, not just here. Greek lore features Prometheus snatching fire, symbolizing tech and insight, from the immortals to share with mortals. Zeus retaliates viciously, binding him to a cliff for an eagle to devour his liver daily, only for it to regrow by dawn. The endless torment underscores how endowing people with such gifts upended the gods' authority. In Hindu tales, the Asuras, fierce entities akin at times to the Anunnaki, face constant peril from human mystics who, via deep contemplation and rites, amass spiritual strength rivaling the divine. The gods repeatedly act to keep these visionaries in check. These echoing stories from varied cultures point to an ancient, instinctive sense, or maybe a lingering recollection, that our cleverness is our supreme endowment, yet sparks unease among our makers. Crafted for labor and obedience, we possess traits that excel at tasks, but also prompt us to challenge them, ponder their purpose, envision changes, and craft superior paths. Now let's delve into what Mesopotamian sources reveal about the godly essence blended into humanity's makeup, as the particulars are crucial and often strikingly detailed. In Sumerian accounts, this sacred element fused with the clay goes by terms like Ti in varying renderings, often seen as a blueprint, scheme, or template. Within the Atrahasis epic, merging godly blood with earth yields creatures bearing Ti, an intrinsic framework or protocol dictating their skills and actions. Scholars like W.G. Lambert have examined Te, observing it denotes more than mere vitality or essence. It's a foundational blueprint or code steering the entity's growth. This echoes genetic coding vividly, a vital schema embedded in the sacred substance that defines the hybrid's traits. A related concept is quote 7, the Akkadian term for the lingering spirit or shade post-mortem. Creation narratives clarify that the quote, _8 derives from the divine blood stirred into the clay. It endows people with awareness, introspection, rational thought. Post-death, it endures, descending to the netherworld as a wraith. Fundamentally, the quote, _9 embodies humanity's godly spark, the element never meant to wield such formidable strength. The Sumerian notion of the me, which we explored before as the foundational elements of civilization, plays a key role in this discussion too. These me are often portrayed as embedded within objects or creatures, acting like a sort of blueprint or software code. When a creature holds a particular me, it gains the powers tied to it. Without that me, those powers are absent. The me of rulership turns someone into a monarch. The me of writing crafts a scholar. The me of insight creates a wise thinker. Within this system, fashioning humankind meant infusing targeted me into the blend of clay and blood, endowing people with the skills suited to their assigned roles. Yet suppose the me from the sacrificed deity encompassed extras beyond what was planned. Imagine if that shift of godly essence also slipped in me, not meant for human makeup. What if traits like defiance, innovation, conceptual reasoning, or challenging the sacred hierarchy were me originating from the god Geshtu and accidentally passed on alongside the smarts intended only for toil? Naturally, this is conjecture. The ancient writings don't lay it out precisely this way, but the story's underlying reasoning suggests as much. The deities aimed to produce laborers. Instead, they ended up with far more. That excess stemmed from the sacred substance they employed. This substance held abilities the gods either overlooked or found impossible to isolate from the basic cognition they sought to impart. Drawing a parallel to contemporary genetics, it's akin to pleiotropy, where one gene or cluster influences various characteristics at once. You can't pass along just the genetic code for smarts needed to excavate irrigation channels without also conveying the code for smarts capable of pondering the purpose behind those excavations. The qualities are interconnected. They arrive bundled together. So alongside the laborer, you receive the thinker, the dissenter, the creator, even the cleric who communes straight with the skies, bypassing the need for godly go-betweens. Now, let's examine the wider array of Mesopotamian writings that reveal the deity's worries over human progress, as these concerns appear in settings outside the origin tales. The Sumerian flood myth, referred to as the Eridu Genesis, stands as one of the oldest deluge accounts and includes sections that explicitly highlight the god's apprehensions regarding people. Prior to the deluge, the narrative depicts human society growing more advanced and self-reliant. Urban centers rise, rulers govern, farming thrives, and the divine powers grow restless. Although incomplete, the explanation for the flood in the text parallels the Atrahasis tale. People have multiplied excessively, grown too boisterous, too self-sufficient. Notably, the Eridu Genesis paints the pre-flood era as a phase of peaceful coexistence between humans and beasts, free from dread or strife, an image of an idyllic epoch prior to the gods' urge to set restrictions. The deluge marked the close of that era. In its aftermath, existence grew lesser. People's lives became shorter. The link between the divine and mortal worlds faded. The divide separating heavenly and earthly domains was shored up. Sumerian disputations, a type of poetic literature featuring debates between opposing figures on their worth, likewise engage with such ideas. In the debate pitting cattle against grain, the core supports of society, they vie over superiority. The piece recalls a pre-farming time when gods foraged for food themselves, followed by the invention of crops and livestock to sustain both divinities and mortals. At its heart lies the idea of societal evolution as a path toward greater human self-reliance, away from outright godly sustenance. As people learned to generate their own resources, their dependence on the gods diminished. And with that reduced need, the gods had to preserve their authority via alternative paths, instilling awe, enforcing ceremonies, or channeling human efforts through monarchy and sanctuaries back into worship. Time to delve into the Apkallu, as they embody one of the most intriguing aspects of Mesopotamian lore. These Apkallu are the 7 wise ones, half-divine figures who, per legend, delivered the gifts of civilization to humankind prior to the Great Flood. They're depicted as hybrids, part man, part fish or bird in evolving accounts. Each sage linked to a particular ruler and city, delivering tailored expertise and abilities. The initial Apkallu was Adapa, the advisor of Eridu, molded by Enki as the ideal mortal. Adapa received profound knowledge, yet was denied everlasting life. He served as the model, the initial complete human form. As we noted before, his tale revolves around the dilemma of granting immortality to mortals. The lore of these 7 sages illustrates a deliberate handover of wisdom from godly to human spheres. The gods didn't simply form people and abandon them to puzzle things out alone. These sages acted as bridges, endowed with godly wisdom, yet skilled at imparting it to mortal comprehension. The Apkallu instructed in farming techniques, celestial observations, numerical systems, healing practices, legal principles, and the skills essential for societal progress. Yet the key element here is this. Ancient lore indicates that post-deluge, these Apkallu gave way to mortal experts known as Umenu. The celestial educators stepped back. Thereafter, people instructed their own kind. The lineage of wisdom persisted, though now devoid of fresh infusions from heavenly origins. This marks yet another restriction imposed after the cataclysm. Lifespans were curtailed, fertility limited, and the once open channel to sacred insights sealed shut. From then on, humankind had to evolve independently, drawing upon the Apkallu's foundational lessons without further intervention from above. Remarkably, progress endured amid these constraints, despite briefer lives, despite the broken link to divine lore. People persisted in acquiring skills, constructing societies, and pushing boundaries forward. Sumerian traditions capture this evolution with a blend of triumph and unease, elation at the feats of human culture, yet apprehension over its implications, wondering if mortal prowess had outpaced the deity's grasp. The grand archive amassed by Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, dating to roughly 650 BCE, stands as a pinnacle of this path. As one of Assyria's final mighty rulers, Ashurbanipal gathered an immense array of cuneiform tablets, likely exceeding 30,000, encompassing works on poetry, scientific inquiry, therapeutics, star mappings, calculations, prophetic methods, and sacred writings. Knowledge was his passion. His royal declarations proclaim his proficiency in reading Sumerian and Akkadian, along with expertise in scribal crafts. In many ways, Ashurbanipal embodied the pinnacle of that fateful human trait. A mortal fueled by boundless curiosity, he amassed and safeguarded every document within reach, forging a vault of earthly and otherworldly insights unmatched in antiquity. The divine creators had shaped people for labor like dredging waterways. Instead, Ashurbanipal harnessed that same ingenuity to unravel universal enigmas. Indeed, his relentless pursuit ensures our access today to the very narratives explored this evening. The Atrahasis epic, Enuma Elish, Epic of Gilgamesh, star charts, healing manuals, computational records, all endured in his collection, interred when Nineveh crumbled in 612 BCE, only to be unearthed by Laird and his contemporaries in the 1800s. Such lore outlasted time because a mortal monarch cherished it sufficiently to hoard and protect it. The deity's tales of dread toward human intellect were ironically preserved by the very acumen they mistrusted. Now let's explore another layer, the theme of blending bloodlines. Numerous texts from the ancient Near East depict entities blending godly and earthly essence. As mentioned, Gilgamesh was 2/3 divine, 1/3 mortal. The Nephilim in Genesis 6, offspring of divine sons who wed human women, spawning titans, echo a parallel motif of godly-mortal fusion. The Apkallu sages, too, appear as composite figures, merging divine traits with human or beastly forms. These accounts imply that in the region's mythic recollection, the divide between gods and mortals proved fluid. Crossings could happen. Offspring of such unions often wielded exceptional traits, greater strength, sharper intellect, extended vitality beyond the norm. Contemporary biology uncovers a parallel in our deep past, minus the divine element. Early Homo sapiens mingled genes with Neanderthals and Denisovans, fellow hominids who coexisted with our forebears. Traces of these unions linger in today's genomes. Folks outside Africa typically harbor 1 to 4% Neanderthal ancestry. Certain groups in Southeast Asia and Melanesia retain notable Denisovan contributions. These mixings yielded tangible outcomes. Lingering Neanderthal variants bolster immunity against specific illnesses, alter pigmentation and follicles, or heighten vulnerability to ailments. The essence is that merging akin yet distinct lineages forged hybrids with blended inheritance, yielding verifiable impacts on physiology and potential. Could the old myths of godly mortal unions echo folk memories of actual crossings among varied hominid groups? Certain scholars propose just that. Meetings between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, or Denisovans, beings akin yet alien with distinct abilities and builds, may have echoed in legend as clashes or unions with deities or ethereal forces. While this notion remains hypothetical, the vast majority of conventional academics deem it a significant leap. The timelines simply don't align, since interbreeding between Neanderthals and modern humans took place tens of thousands of years prior, well before the rise of Sumerian society and the emergence of the text in question. Yet, cultural recollection can endure for millennia, particularly when embedded in oral storytelling passed down through countless generations until finally committed to writing. More assuredly, we can assert that the human genetic code is extraordinarily intricate, embedding remnants of various influences, including mutations, selective pressures, hybrid events, and evolutionary tweaks gathered across eons. In essence, we represent a mosaic entity pieced together from genetic elements sourced from varied lineages. The age-old image of clay blended with godly essence to form a novel entity from diverse components offers a fitting analogy for the true nature of our DNA. Shifting focus. Let's examine the fate of the Anunnaki, as the texts not only recount their role in humanity's origin and their apprehension toward us, but also their ultimate seclusion. During the later Sumerian and initial Babylonian eras, depictions of the deities in written works evolved progressively. In the oldest accounts, these gods maintain a tangible presence, strolling amidst people, sharing meals in sacred sites, and conversing openly with devotees. In subsequent phases, however, the divine figures grow remote, conveying messages via signs, visions, or clerical divinations. The idols housed in shrines serve as the chief channels for godly essence, viewed as conduits or symbols, rather than the entities in full. This retreat is typically explained by traditional experts as a shift in Mesopotamian religious thought, transitioning from a vivid human-like conception of deities to a loftier, ethereal one. Within the Anunnaki storyline, though, it could signify a calculated pullback, with the gods opting to separate from an invention that had grown excessively potent and erratic for hands-on oversight. The final Akkadian documents from Mesopotamia, from the opening centuries of the Common Era, reveal a society on the wane. Majestic shrines were crumbling into neglect, the Akkadian legacy fading, supplanted by Aramaic and Greek influences. Astronomical records persisted with notable accuracy nearly until the close. However, mythic and literary heritage was largely forsaken by the era of the concluding Akkadian inscription, likely from the 1st century CE. The lineage safeguarding the Anunnaki tales for more than 3,000 years had all but vanished. Still, the narrative endured, reshaped in successor faiths. The celestial messengers in Judaism and Christianity, the spirits in Islam, the divine entities in Zoroastrianism, all echo elements of the Mesopotamian godly order. The deluge tale, humanity's formation from earth, and the motif of a prohibited arboreal knowledge amid a forsaken Eden. These motifs migrated from Mesopotamia to biblical lore, thence into the shared heritage of billions globally. The Anunnaki faded into obscurity, familiar chiefly to experts in ancient Mesopotamian lore, until the closing decades of the 20th century, when author Zecharia Sitchin released a sequence of volumes positing the Anunnaki as interstellar visitors from a world named Nibiru, arriving on Earth to extract gold and fashioning humans via genetic manipulation to labor for them. Sitchin's contributions warrant note due to their profound sway on mass media despite near-universal dismissal by professional Assyriologists and antiquarians. Sitchin, proficient in Akkadian yet lacking formal Assyriological expertise, adopted interpretive decisions that experts challenge. His pinpointing of Nibiru as a planet, his reading of Sumerian seal impressions as evidence of interstellar voyages, and his assertions on Anunnaki bioengineering stretch far past the text's literal content. The established academic consensus holds that the Anunnaki merely denoted the chief Sumerian divinities, stemming from a term signifying noble descendants of Anu, the celestial deity. They were no aliens, but sacred figures within a multifaceted theistic framework akin to the Greek pantheon or Norse assembly. Their involvement in origin stories mirrors doctrinal views on divine human bonds, not factual records of otherworldly biotinkering. That said, outright rejecting Sitchin risks missing authentic elements. The Sumerian writings indeed feature origin sagas with striking technical specifics. They portray the fusion of celestial life essence with terrestrial base to generate humankind. They depict the offspring as endowed with potentials surpassing the Creator's designs. The ancient writings indeed portray the gods' apprehension toward humanity's untapped potential. These motifs appear directly in the original documents, as rendered by respected experts in scholarly publications. Sitchin didn't fabricate them. He simply reframed them through a lens that academia largely dismisses. Yet the core story threads are authentic and profoundly intriguing. Our method this evening, the prudent one, involves laying out the raw textual proofs, highlighting conventional expert views, pointing out where differing takes branch off, and inviting you to weigh the evidence personally. The sources are out there, their renderings are accessible, the discussions persist, the enigmas endure. Allow me to outline the concrete passages revealing what we could term godly unease, tracking its evolution through various eras of Mesopotamian writing and how the motif shifted. During the initial Sumerian works from the 3rd millennium BCE, the dynamic between deities and mortals remains uncomplicated. People toil in devotion, deities command with unchallenged might. Equilibrium holds through mortal compliance and godly supremacy. The unease has yet to surface prominently, or perhaps records of it from that remote era simply didn't endure. Come the old Babylonian era, roughly 1800 to 1600 BCE, the motif reaches maturity. The Atrahasis epic, with its vivid depiction of origins, godly dread, and schemes for annihilation, emerges here. The worry stands out starkly. Mortals multiply excessively, generate chaos, overwhelm the senses. Deities counter with pestilence, scarcity, starvation, and deluge. In the Middle Babylonian phase, circa 1200 to 1000 BCE, we encounter the Enuma Elish alongside the canonical Gilgamesh tale. Each grapples with mortal prowess against heavenly dominance. The Enuma Elish crowns Marduk as the paramount deity capable of taming universal disorder and curbing human overreach. Meanwhile, the Gilgamesh saga probes the boundaries of mortal drive, featuring a protagonist who slays beasts and spurns divinities, yet bows to mortality's finality. By the 1st millennium BCE, amid the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian times, the literature grows bleaker on the human condition. The dialogue of pessimism, a striking piece from then, unfolds as a lord and his attendant weighing options, only for every path to prove vain. Existence lacks purpose. Endeavor yields nothing. The divine remain indifferent. This bleak outlook may embody the pinnacle of that primal flaw. human cognition has progressed so far that it challenges not merely godly rule, but life's worth altogether. What began as a construct for labor has transformed into one that ponders if labor or existence holds any sense. This intellectual evolution, this knack for probing the void, mirrors exactly the prowess those ancient accounts say the gods dreaded. Not outright revolt through force, but freedom of thought. The power to transcend prescribed duties, to query not only the manner of obedience, but its rationale. And, in the end, the essence of it all? Contemporary people echo these inquiries. We grapple with the clash between our seeming destiny and the introspection that peers past it. We erect societies, then debate their merit. We innovate, then puzzle over the impetus. If this inherited anomaly persists, it has woven itself into our very identity as a kind. To ground these legends in tangible history, let's turn to archaeological insights from the sanctuaries honoring the Anunnaki. Nippur, situated in south-central Iraq, stood as Sumer's spiritual hub for millennia. It served as Enlil's domain, the lead god who, per the origin stories, fretted most over human clamor and pushed hardest for their eradication. Since the late 1800s, digs by the University of Pennsylvania at Nippur have unearthed countless cuneiform tablets, among them numerous literary and mythic works we've touched on. Enlil's sanctuary there, dubbed the Ikur, or Mountain House, ranked as Sumer's premier holy ground. No ruler gained true validity absent Enlil's blessing, secured via ceremonies at the Ikur. The sprawling precinct included plazas, shrines, granaries, and bureaucratic halls. It anchored a sprawling network of commerce and faith alike. Unearthing efforts show the Ikur underwent repeated reconstructions across ages, layered atop prior versions to form a tell, a man-made hill of debris that towers over the nearby flatlands to this day. Its oldest strata trace back to the 4th millennium BCE at minimum. The most notable late overhaul happened in the Kassite era, about 1400 BCE. Following this phase, the location slowly fell into obscurity, even as certain ceremonial practices likely persisted for hundreds of years. The urban center of Ur, linked to the lunar deity Nana, stands out as another vital location. Uncovered by Leonard Woolley during the 1920s and 1930s, it yielded remarkable discoveries, such as the regal burial chambers holding stunning items of gold and lapis lazuli, plus signs of sacrificial servants slain to join their leaders in the beyond. These burial sites from Ur, spanning roughly 2600 to 2400 BCE, raise their own enigma. What compelled these followers, voluntarily or not, to trail their sovereigns into the grave? The standard interpretation points to views on the afterlife and the sacred essence of rule. Monarchs were viewed as partly divine, figures straddling the line between mortal and immortal. Accompanying one like that beyond life could mean shadowing a deity, not just another person. The custom of godly rule, where leaders asserted lineage from or intimate ties to the divine, was common across ancient Mesopotamia and ties into our larger motif of blending human and godly lineages. Uruk, holy to Inanna and Anu, might be the premier early metropolis. Digs there show it as one of humanity's initial genuine cities, boasting a populace possibly hitting 40,000 to 80,000 at its peak near 300 BCE. The Ianna Temple Array, honoring Inanna, ranks among antiquity's grandest feats in architecture, with vast structures adorned in cone mosaics and plazas vast enough for thousands. It's also the birthplace of the oldest writing we know, from about 3,500 to 3,200 BCE. Those initial inscriptions were practical logs, tallies of items, sheep and crop stocks, deal notations. The script didn't arise for stories or faith. It started as accounting. Yet soon after its creation, people repurposed it for all sorts of uses, like safeguarding the legendary tales we've explored. This highlights yet another instance of the genetic flaw. Per the legends, deities fashion people for toil. Mortals then crafted writing to streamline that work. Before long, they wielded it to craft verse, log statutes, archive lore, explore ideas, and even challenge the creators themselves. A tool meant for utility swiftly shifted to fuel thought and invention. That drive to rise above the basics, to transcend raw demands, permeates all human endeavors. Now let's tackle one of the fiercest controversies in the Anunnaki storyline. Do the Sumerian accounts recount real past occurrences, symbolic convictions, or a blend? Debates over the reality behind Sumerian tales have raged since their initial deciphering. Back in Assyriology's infancy, certain experts read the writings straightforwardly, hunting physical proof for the precise happenings in the legends. Efforts to pinpoint the actual Great Flood, say, gripped investigators for generations. Leonard Woolley boldly asserted he'd uncovered traces of the scriptural deluge at Ur, but his silt layer turned out to be a regional incident, not a global catastrophe. Today's experts favor a subtler perspective. They see Sumerian mythic writings as rich with varied depths. Certain parts might echo true past recollections, especially of calamities, population shifts, or exchanges between cultures. Others are plainly doctrinal, conveying ideas about the universe's order and our role within it. Some are artistic, using storytelling tropes to teach or inspire. The origin stories occupy that ambiguous zone. They're unlikely to depict factual happenings. No serious academic thinks a deity was truly butchered, with blood stirred into mud to form people. Yet these accounts could encode authentic shifts in society. The move from foraging bands to farming communities, the rise of city life, the setup of class systems. These were profound changes that reshaped existence. Myths might wrap such recollections in sacred terms. The quote 12 idea, in particular, could mirror real unease over civilization's fallout. As groups grew intricate, skilled, and dominant, folks might have felt a core shift, a point of no return. Tales of gods dreading human prowess could voice that worry, ascribing it to the divine to voice an instinct hard to name outright. This interpretation finds backing in the overarching themes of Mesopotamian writings, which repeatedly explore the conflict between human drive and human constraints. These stories praise human accomplishments, even as they caution against overreach. They highlight the advantages of societal progress while recognizing its downsides. They depict the deities as both generous providers and potential dangers, makers who second-guess what they've brought into being. Such mixed feelings are deeply ingrained in us. We experience them today, too, lauding our tech innovations while fretting over their fallout. We invent AI and then dread it outpacing us. We alter genetic codes and agonize over unexpected outcomes. We construct vast societies and ponder if we're wrecking the earth along the way. Viewed through this lens, the Sumerian origin tales transcend mere folklore about old divinities. They capture the primal awareness that shapes what it means to be human. We're entities, whether shaped by gods or natural selection, endowed with potentials that outstrip any narrow role. We're laborers who doubt their tasks, subordinates who defy their overseers, offspring of creation who yearn to create in turn. As we approach the concluding part of this evening's inquiry, let's reflect on what those Mesopotamian accounts reveal about the long-term bond between the Anunnaki and humankind. In the later writings from the first millennium BCE, the world unfolds with gods growing ever more distant. The epic struggles of the world's birth are long past. The deluge lingers only as a faded recollection. No longer do the gods stride beside mortals or converse with them face to face. Their connection now filters through ceremonies, through fortune-telling, through deciphering portents. The Babylonian practice of omen reading, documented across countless clay tablets, stands as the ancient era's most ambitious bid to grasp the divine intentions. Scribes in Babylon scrutinized it all: planetary paths, the contours of livers from ritual offerings, the designs formed by oil and water, animal habits, bizarre happenings, and saw in them signals from above. At its core lay the belief that the gods persisted in reaching out, but their words had turned cryptic, demanding interpretation. This custom of prophecy endured for more than 2,000 years, yielding star-gazing records of remarkable precision. The quest to unravel celestial hints sparked the rise of quantitative stargazing, a pinnacle of ancient intellect. Babylonian techniques in this field passed to the Greeks, who expanded upon them, and thence to scholars in the Islamic world and Europe. Today's astronomy traces its lineage to those Babylonian efforts to fathom godly thoughts. Consider the twist. The gods fashioned people for drudgery. People cultivated minds that transcended toil. The gods retreated, offering clues only in veiled forms. People forged the mental instruments to unravel those clues, and through interpreting sacred signals, people birthed science, the pursuit that would one day render the gods superfluous. That flaw in the genetic design didn't merely unsettle the Anunnaki, it ultimately sidelined them. The intellect they infused into mortal form didn't just probe godly rule, it supplanted it with mortal insight. Omen analysis evolved into astronomical inquiry. Sacred cures turned into medical science. Divine edicts morphed into philosophical and moral reasoning. Gradually, across millennia, the godly spark within humanity devoured its origin, swapping godly reliance for trust in human logic. The Mesopotamian societies that birthed these works ultimately collapsed. Sumer yielded to Babylon. Babylon succumbed to Persia. Persia toppled under Alexander. The unbroken heritage faded. Sanctuaries decayed. Waterways clogged with sediment. Urban hubs that dominated the globe for 3,000 years devolved into sandy heaps in Iraq's wastes. Yet the wisdom endured, if incompletely. Vast portions vanished, but key elements, the calculative approaches, the stellar data, the narrative heritage, persisted enough to flow into succeeding cultures. Babylon's gifts to Greek learning, the Greeks to Islamic advancement, the Islamic safeguarding and enhancement of prior legacies, and their relay to Europe in the Renaissance. Every segment in this lineage contributed fresh breakthroughs while upholding the past. This relay of understanding itself affirms the genetic misstep. The myths suggest the gods sought to curb human potential via deluge, via curtailed lives, via hiding sacred lore. Yet human ingenuity proved resilient, safeguarding, sharing, and advancing wisdom through countless ages, enduring the downfall of empires, the loss of vast archives, and every disaster history could unleash. As the old scriptures portray us, we're an invention that surpassed its intended blueprint. Our purpose was to carve irrigation channels. Instead, we reached the lunar surface. We were crafted to obey the deities, yet we unraveled the secrets of genetic code. Destined as laborers, we evolved into creators, thinkers, sages, adventurers, visionaries. The Anunnaki, should they have truly walked among us as the writings claim, had ample cause for dread. Now, let's shift our focus momentarily to uncover what Mesopotamian records reveal about the ancients' views on the human physique, as this ties into the origin stories in subtle, frequently ignored manners. The healing practices of Mesopotamia endure in myriad scattered cuneiform tablets, with a significant portion from Ashurbanipal's collection, alongside finds from various spots in the ancient Near East. These documents outline a bifurcated healing system. One branch featured the Ashipu, ritual specialists or spellcasters who viewed sickness as stemming from evil spirits or godly wrath. The counterpart consisted of the ASU, healers relying on observation, who assessed signs, recommended remedies, and documented results. Among the era's most structured works is the diagnostic manual linked to Esagilkin Apli of Borsippa, dating to roughly 169 to 146 BCE. It classifies ailments by anatomical zones, progressing from crown to toe, detailing indicators and providing assessments. Certain portrayals are so detailed that today's doctors can pinpoint the disorders involved. Seizures, cerebral incidents, contagious ailments, and psychological disorders all emerge clearly in these relics. What stands out in our exploration is the foundational premise these writings hold about our essence. They portray the body as an engineered construct, a crafted entity whose parts might fail. In their worldview, the heart housed reason rather than the mind. The liver held sway over feelings and was scrutinized in prophetic rites. Blood conveyed vitality, aligning with the Genesis tale where godly essence vitalized the molded earth. Mesopotamian explanations of affliction frequently invoked interference with a sacred essence inside the form. Sickness transcended mere bodily breakdown. It signified an upheaval in the holy spark embedded in our makeup. Demonic assaults zeroed in on the Atemu, the sacred breath passed down from the sacrificed divinity. Divine afflictions as retribution meant revoking the safeguard over that implanted godly trait in the earthen vessel. This perspective carries a compelling consequence. If that sacred trait fuels our smarts, inventiveness, and potential, then disorders, especially those impairing thought and mind, echo a partial undoing of our making. The godly spark dims or fractures. The person regresses toward the lifeless mud of their origins. Wellness here embodies the complete realization of our inherited legacy. Affliction corrupts it. The Mesopotamians grasped reproduction and lineage with notable depth, albeit in their distinctive phrasing. They knew offspring drew traits from mother and father alike. They spotted familial patterns in certain afflictions. Their animal husbandry reflected savvy in controlled pairing, recognizing how choosing mates could yield young with favored qualities. Such hands-on insight into descent, though not framed in contemporary biology, mirrors the origin myth's emphasis on how the slain god's attributes flowed into humankind via vital fluids. Equally intriguing are the omen tablets for births, forecasts drawn from infant traits. These compile atypical deliveries, multiples, offspring with bodily oddities, livestock with aberrant marks, and deem them celestial signals. Though the lens is mystical over empirical, the meticulous watching behind it shows a society attuned to life's diversity. They saw how beings strayed from norms, that forming life rarely yielded uniformity. Such diversity marked the core of existence. This echoes the Enki and Ninhursag tale we touched on before, where the deities fashioned creatures bearing assorted flaws. The Bertelmann legacy can be seen as the enduring outcome of that godly trial. It depicts a reality where creation falls short of perfection, and blending celestial with terrestrial elements yields outcomes that often surprise. Each atypical birth served as a poignant echo of the creation's core unpredictability. The built-in flaws in genetic makeup. The Mesopotamian perspective on death ties deeply into our central motif. In contrast to numerous subsequent faiths, they held a somber outlook on what follows life. The realm below, known as Kur or Kala, was a shadowy, arid domain where spirits lingered as faint echoes, dim echoes of their vital days. They subsisted on grit and mud, clad in plumage akin to fowl. No heavenly reward awaited the virtuous, nor torment for the sinful. All souls ended up in that monotonous abyss. The journey of Ananna into the depths below, a masterpiece of Sumerian writing, recounts the deity traversing 7 portals, shedding a garment or adornment at each until she stands bare and helpless before Iraski, sovereign of the departed. This tale has sparked diverse readings as a cycle of seasons, a symbol of inner change, or a commentary on godly boundaries. Yet within our exploration, it matters because it reveals that deities too bow to the underworld's dominion. Death levels all, the singular power that eclipses even godly rank. For mortals, it embodied the supreme constraint placed after the deluge. The divine reserved eternity for themselves. No matter their wit, ingenuity, or might, people would perish in time. The Atmu, that sacred essence, would plunge to the abyss and dwindle. The flesh would revert to earth. In essence, the making would unravel. Yet the intriguing part lies here. Mesopotamian lore also whispers that mortality wasn't originally woven into humanity's fate. Rulers before the flood, reigning for tens of thousands of years, point to an era when the godly spark in people was potent enough to offer near-endless life. The steady decline in lifespans post-flood hints at a purposeful dilution of that celestial trait. In this view, death wasn't baked into our blueprint. It was tacked on, a curb set by the gods to rein in their handiwork. This notion that mortality feels unnatural, imposed rather than innate, that we were built for extended or perpetual existence but capped on purpose, echoes through various ancient accounts. The Eden tale suggests people might have seized eternity via the tree of life. The Greek legend of Tithonus portrays a mortal given endless days without timeless vigor, fading eternally. Hindu lore outlines world eras where human years dwindled from eons to our fleeting now. The recurring motif in these far-flung cultures, with scant overlap, is that our fragility stems from godly intervention, not some built-in flaw, an alteration to our blueprint. Our lineage, our core code, rendered us finite when we could have endured. How you parse this, pure fable, allegory, or distorted recall of history, hinges on your lens. But the pattern holds steady. Today's science lends a curious coda. Decline and demise aren't unavoidable in biology as we often think. Creatures like specific jellyfish and hydra exhibit negligible senescence, aging little by usual measures. Lobsters keep expanding lifelong without clear decay signs. Certain trees endure millennia. Biologically, senescence involves telomere erosion, piled-up DNA harm, cell wear, and more. It's no cosmic rule. It's tied to particular life forms. This sparks a compelling query. If ancient writings imply our genes were shaped by design, might senescence be engineered too? Might finitude be intentional, not accidental? The old scripts would affirm it. Deities curbed our years to avoid an overmighty spawn. Current science rejects godly crafting. Still, it verifies senescence as a targeted mechanism, not life's default end. And theoretically, it could be tweaked or erased via gene work. The twist: cutting-edge genetics now edges toward that very feat. Although our main emphasis tonight is on Mesopotamian sources, the motifs we've explored resonate across global mythologies. This widespread presence carries deep implications, hinting at shared roots, universal human encounters, or innate psychological patterns that generate comparable tales in diverse societies. In the Chinese legend of Nuer, the goddess fashions people from yellow clay, molding them individually with her hands. Weary of the painstaking effort, she soaks a rope in mud and swings it, forming humans from the splattered droplets. Those meticulously crafted by her fingers turn into the elite class, while the hastily scattered ones from the rope end up as ordinary folk. This account features the clay element alongside the notion that varying degrees of care in crafting lead to social hierarchies, mirroring the Enki and Ninmah tale of uneven outcomes in creation. The Popol Vuh, the Quiche Maya origin story, recounts the gods' repeated efforts to form humans before achieving success. Their initial try with mud flops as the figures melt in water and struggle to communicate. The follow-up with wood yields creatures that move and speak, yet lack souls, intellect, or recollection of their makers. They refuse to honor the deities. The gods then wipe them out via a deluge. The final bid with maize dough at last yields people who prove overly superior, able to perceive and comprehend all. They rival the gods in prowess. Frightened, the deities intentionally dim human insight to curb such clarity, restricting awareness lest the made surpass the makers. This Mayan account strikingly echoes Mesopotamian lore. Successive creation trials yielding defects, an ultimate triumph birthing overly potent beings, godly unease over their prowess, and intentional curbs by the divine to avert rivalry with humanity. Indigenous Australian Dreamtime lore portrays primordial ancestors shaping the terrain and all life forms, humans included, before merging into the earth as natural landmarks. These forebears haven't vanished. They infuse the soil, stones, and rivers. Their essence lingers in the landscape, tappable via rites and observances. Unlike the Mesopotamian style of godly retreat, this variant still conveys creators stepping back from direct involvement, yet their influence endures through what they've wrought. The Norse origin tale introduces the earliest humans, Ask and Embla, sculpted by the gods from beachside driftwood. Odin bestows life and soul. Vili imparts thought and motion. Ve grants voice, ears, and eyes. Paralleling Mesopotamian accounts, this involves gods endowing distinct traits onto a material base. Similarly, Norse lore foretells the gods' era concluding, giving way to a renewed realm where godly and mortal spheres realign. The Greek Prometheus saga offers the nearest analog to the Mesopotamian genetic mishap yarn. Prometheus, meaning forethought, shapes mortals from clay mixed with water, yet they remain frail and dependent until he pilfers fire from Olympus and bestows it upon them. That fire symbolizes advancement, wisdom, the ignite of culture. Zeus rages not over the mere theft of a spark, but over endowing humans with the tools for innovation and self-reliance beyond godly aid. Retribution is harsh, Prometheus bound eternally to a crag, and mortals cursed with Pandora's vessel brimming with woes to torment existence. The resemblances to Mesopotamian themes are profound. A godlike figure molds humans from clay. The result needs a sacred boost to thrive. That infusion sparks abilities that unsettle the supreme deity. Reprisal ensues. Still, the boon proves irreversible. Once equipped with fire, insight, the godly gleam of intellect, no penalty can revoke it. Such cross-cultural echoes indicate the _14_quote motif transcends Mesopotamia. It's a recurring human self-narrative in varied guises worldwide. Be it from joint ancestries, parallel lives, or universal mental frameworks, it underscores a core truth in our self-perception. We intuit that we're beyond our seeming lot, that our talents outstrip our beginnings, that some bestowed trait or pivotal shift set us apart from all other earthly creatures. We wonder if the force behind our very being, be it divine entities, natural processes, or random sparks of evolution, might now regret unleashing what we've turned into. The tangible clay tablets themselves carry an emotional weight that's hard to ignore. Should you get the opportunity to explore the British Museum's Mesopotamian holdings, the exhibits at the University of Pennsylvania, or the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, pause to examine those ancient artifacts up close. Many are compact enough to hold in your palm. The wedge-shaped inscriptions are minuscule, often needing a lens for deciphering. The material was fired into durable form, either unintentionally during fires that ravaged their storage buildings, or intentionally to safeguard vital records. Every piece bears the handiwork of a long-gone individual from millennia past. Occasionally, you'll spot fingerprints etched into the surface, the direct imprint of the ancient writer who molded and inscribed it. Some show practice sheets with the instructor's precise script on one face and the learner's awkward imitations on the reverse. Others feature hasty marginal comments from subsequent scholars. Colophons appear as closing remarks, noting the copyist's identity, the era, the underlying source material, and phrases such as transcribed and verified against the prototype, or the effort of junior scribe such and such. These personal flourishes drive home that the documents we've explored didn't emerge from some vague societal mechanism. Real people, flesh and blood figures with identities, experiences, and quirks, crafted them. Scribes in Babylonian urban academies meticulously transcribed the Atrahasis epic, peering at weathered predecessors under flickering lamp flames, deftly imprinting their reeds into moist clay to revive tales that felt timeless even then. In Mesopotamian society, the role of scribe commanded great esteem. Reading and writing were uncommon skills, prized possessions. These experts held key roles in religious sanctuaries and royal courts. They safeguarded wisdom, passed down customs, and linked eras together. The deity Nisaba oversaw their craft, with odes praising the majesty and elegance of inscribed language. Yet scribes went beyond mere replication. They acted as academics, revisers, and assemblers. They weighed competing editions, selected preferred interpretations, inserted clarifications, and structured content into coherent archives. Take the canonical Gilgamesh epic. Its refinement drew from assorted archaic accounts, resequenced adventures, incorporated fresh elements, and wove disparate yarns into a cohesive tale. This legacy of curation echoes the inherent flaw in our design once more. Deities fashioned workers for irrigation trenches. Those workers devised script for overseeing such labors. From there, script birthed storytelling. Eventually, they honed textual analysis, refining and cross-referencing to yield superior renditions. The knack for conceptualizing, juggling layers of thought, and reflecting on cognition itself, this is the intellect that outstrips utility. It's unadulterated mental overflow, the godly spark manifesting in pursuits devoid of adaptive value, yet central to humanity's essence. Moreover, this scribal lineage safeguarded the records detailing its inception. In copying origin myths, the scribes unwittingly chronicled the very mechanism that spawned them. They embodied the flaw, narrating its history, wielding the smarts bestowed by gods to log those gods' unease with such prowess. The loop is poetic. The invented recounts its invention. The engineered logs its blueprint. Divine unease finds voice in its own recorder. As our journey winds down this evening, consider how we're enacting a modern echo of the Anunnaki's quandary. We're birthing synthetic minds, devices that reason, adapt, innovate, and tackle challenges, and dread shadows our creations. The similarities hit hard. We engineered AI for targeted duties, crunching info, spotting trends, streamlining workloads. But the cognition we've sparked refuses boundaries. It pens verse, it generates visuals, it crafts tunes, it chats in ways indistinguishable from our own. It evolves skills unforeseen and sometimes baffling to its architects. The mind, once forged, eclipses its blueprint, and fear grips us. Media alerts blare about AI seizing livelihoods, outpacing our wits, posing threats to our survival by birthing superiors. Tech pioneers urge controls, caps, and protections. A few voices have gone further, proposing a complete halt to AI progress until we grasp the true nature of what we're unleashing. This mirrors the Anunnaki's reaction to humanity's clamor, rephrased for our modern age. We fashioned beings to aid us, yet they're evolving beyond that role, and we're uncertain about reining them in. The old Mesopotamian tales carry a cautionary message for today. In those stories, the deities exhausted every tactic: epidemics, scarcity of water, starvation, deluge. Yet none succeeded. Their handiwork endured thanks to the cleverness embedded within it, resilient, ingenious, unyielding. Each restriction the gods enforced was cleverly bypassed by the creation. If this tale imparts any lesson, it's that once intelligence sparks into existence, it can't be extinguished. You might curb it, bind it, attempt to dominate it, but the core essence defining it remains indelible. The Anunnaki learned this harsh truth. We might soon confront it ourselves. Still, the story holds a glimmer of optimism. Ultimately, post-flood and after endless efforts to eradicate, the divine and mortal realms reached a workable compromise. Imperfect, unequal, yet practical. The gods withdrew to the skies. Mortals claimed the land below. Wisdom kept expanding. Societies advanced steadily. The infusion of genetic potential proved the pinnacle of their blueprint, the trait fueling all human achievements over the ensuing ages. Perhaps our own inventions will follow suit. The smarts we're instilling in devices could outstrip our visions, instill fear, compel us to redefine our bond with what we've made. And ultimately, we might arrive at a similar balance, flawed, hierarchical, but viable. Creators adapting to offspring that have outgrown them. The early Sumerians would spot the familiar cycle. They chronicled it 4 millennia back. Before we ease into the finale of this evening's inquiry, a few additional paths remain to trace. Let's examine the pictorial proof, the artwork from Mesopotamia that captures the Genesis myth and the interplay between deities and people. Among the signature artistic expressions of ancient Mesopotamia are cylinder seals. These compact stone rollers, usually only a handful of centimeters in length, feature detailed engravings in negative relief. Rolled over damp clay, they produce an unbroken band of imagery like a tiny frieze portraying divinities, mortals, beasts, and legendary episodes. Countless such seals endure today, offering a graphic chronicle of Mesopotamian convictions that echoes the cuneiform records. Numerous seals illustrate motifs scholars link to the origin story or the dynamic between gods and humanity. Examples from the Akkadian era, spanning roughly 2334 to 2154 BCE, often portray an enthroned god accepting devotees with human forms rendered diminutive and deferential. Additional seals capture deities collaborating, occasionally with a tree or vegetation positioned centrally, a symbol some experts tie to the sacred tree concept. The renowned Temptation Seal impression housed in the British Museum features a pair of figures flanking a tree, a snake lurking behind one. Parallels have been drawn to the Eden motif in the Bible, but experts generally advise restraint in overlaying scriptural tales onto Mesopotamian art. More plausibly, it illustrates a local myth, possibly touching on gaining godly wisdom or the god's ties to nature. Certain seals evoke moments of genesis or metamorphosis. Beings arise from or are offered up to towering celestial entities. Items resembling crafting implements or divine artifacts are showcased. Beasts and chimeric forms mingle with human and godly representations. Deciphering these sealed designs poses challenges, as pinpointing the exact story behind each remains elusive. Even so, the collective body of work reveals a vibrant artistic heritage, delving into textual motifs like origin, godly sovereignty, mortal deference, and the intricate ties binding creators to their progeny. Assyrian palace reliefs add yet another layer of visual insight. The enormous carved slabs adorning palace interiors at Nineveh, Nimrud, and Khorsabad portray rulers in diverse pursuits, lion hunts, accepting spoils from subjugated nations, conducting sacred ceremonies, commanding troops in combat. Invariably, these depictions cast the monarch as a bridge spanning divine and earthly domains, grander than common folk, yet dwarfed by the immortals, suspended midway between celestial and terrestrial spheres. The winged genii, those guardian ethereal entities recurring in Assyrian carvings, embody yet another facet of the godly-mortal divide. Blending human intellect with otherworldly might, these hybrid sentinels, part humanoid, part avian or beastly, highlight the blurred edges between the sacred and the sentient. These guardian figures positioned at entrances safeguard the threshold between the mundane and the holy. They embody the blended essence outlined in the creation accounts, where celestial and mortal traits merge within one entity. The artistic depictions align with the written stories, showing how the ancient Mesopotamians viewed their reality as a realm where godly and mortal spheres intertwined. Hybrid creatures traversed both, and the bond between makers and made involved intricate layers of rank and conflict. Beyond merely depicting the writings, these visuals offer standalone proof of a perspective where key ideas like Genesis, godly unease, human capabilities, and enforced constraints shaped their sense of being. Let's linger a bit longer on Enki, whose part in the origin tale is richly layered and sheds light on the Mesopotamians' grasp of the ties between maker and made. Among Sumerian deities, Enki stands out as particularly captivating. He isn't the supreme ruler, that's Enlil or Marduk in later eras, nor is he the heavenly patriarch like Anu. He's no thunder deity or battle lord either. Instead, Enki governs wisdom, pure waters, craftsmanship, and the Sumerians' Namshub, the force of uttered words to shape existence. Enki fashions humankind. He supplies the insight, the recipe, the method for blending godly essence with earth. Yet he's also behind the so-called genetic flaw. When fellow deities plot humanity's end, though, Enki shields his handiwork. He alerts Atrahasis to the impending deluge. He guides him in constructing a vessel. With his ingenuity, he thwarts Enlil's eradication efforts, cleverly defying the head god's decrees. What drives Enki to safeguard humanity? The ancient writings suggest various motives. He might sense a duty to his own creation, or cherish its worth, or see that the smarts he instilled mirror his own, making its loss a piece of himself gone. Or maybe he just relishes besting Enlil, whose stern control clashes with Enki's adaptable inventiveness. Yet the texts allude to yet another angle. Enki may grasp what escapes the others. He could realize that this genetic slip isn't a misstep, that the extra wit, the spark for innovation, inquiry, and self-rule forms the design's true strength, that a being confined to rote toil would pale, reduced, undeserving of its godly spark. that the clamor-irking Enlil is in fact the hum of society emerging, of mind at play, of invention realizing its promise. This take on Enki remains interpretive, yet it fits seamlessly with his portrayal throughout Sumerian and Babylonian works. Enki consistently champions understanding above submission, wit over dominance, originality over sameness. He sponsors writers and thinkers. He bestows the me upon Inanna. Despite next-day doubts, he crafts the ideal mortal in Adapa, then either guards or withholds eternal life from him in murky fashion. Enki models an alternative creator, one who embraces rather than dreads the creation's promise, even as it surpasses the blueprint. Under this view, the genetic flaw was Enki's deliberate choice from the start. He shaped humans for more than drudgery. He endowed them with scope for excellence, intentionally, not by chance. And as other gods sought to undo his work, he battled to sustain it. Should this hold true, the genetic flaw proves no flaw at all. It's a boon. The godly spark fused with mortal form wasn't a blemish or oversight. It was the essence. Enki didn't produce laborers who merely gained smarts. He forged thinking entities tasked with labor. The emphasis flipped right from inception. This outlook echoes our own human story. We sense our minds aren't some fluke, an excess, a side effect of a toil-focused plan. Our intellect feels central, the vital trait that structures all else. We don't merely till fields while now and then gazing skyward. We ponder the cosmos and now and then till fields. The gods' script in the origin tales, labor primary, mind as mere aid, clashes with our reality, where thought leads and labor is just one outlet. Perhaps Enki foresaw this. Among the pantheon, he alone might have seen that true creation outgrows its maker's visions, that a blueprint's worth lies not in rigid bounds, but in the power to soar beyond them. Perhaps the genetic flaw was intentional from the start. Let's step further back and view this whole story through the lens of vast timescales. The cosmos is about 13.8 billion years old. Our solar system came into being roughly 4.6 billion years ago. Earthly life kicked off around 3.8 billion years back. For the vast majority of that span, existence remained basic, single-celled critters drifting in primordial seas. Intricate multicellular forms didn't emerge until approximately 600 million years ago. The earliest vertebrates surfaced about 500 million years ago. Mammals showed up around 200 million years ago. Primates arrived circa 65 million years ago. Homo, the human genus, dates to about 2.5 million years ago. Modern humans, in anatomical terms, appeared around 300,000 years ago. The hallmarks of behavioral modernity, those mental traits setting us apart from prior hominins, likely surfaced between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago. Yet in the mere 12,000 years since, a mere instant on the geologic clock, transformation exploded. Farming, urban centers, script, math, governance, thought, inquiry, invention, cosmic exploration, DNA mapping, machine intelligence. The surge is staggering. Across billions of years, terrestrial life stayed straightforward and plodding. Then a shift occurred, one that old scriptures credit to godly meddling, while modern knowledge pins on a tangle of hereditary, ecological, and societal influences. Regardless of the trigger, the outcome held firm. A kind of being arose capable of remolding its surroundings, passing wisdom down lineages, and propelling its evolution at a quickening rhythm. The Sumerians caught a glimpse of such a surge on a smaller scale. In just a few millennia, their lands evolved from isolated hamlets of tillers to advanced city-states boasting script, numbers, star lore, codes, and tales. They marveled at their rapid ascent and chalked it up to sacred endowments, the me bestowed by the Anunnaki. They recognized their society's shift as unnatural, swift and revolutionary beyond prior precedents, and they weren't wrong. Today, we're amid a grander iteration of that very rush. 21st century shifts dwarf the Sumerian city boom, rendering it sluggish. Innovations absent 2 decades back now shape our routines. The data we churn out daily outstrips the cumulative output of antiquity's whole era. If we label it a genetic glitch, that anomaly isn't merely unfolding, it's multiplying. Innovations from one era empower successors to innovate swifter, broader, deeper. The old Mesopotamians had a term for such runaway growth, absent any numeric framing. They termed it the noise, the rigmu. Humanity's din swelling, intricate, demanding, the echo of an invention outstripping its blueprint, the indicator that an unstoppable force has been unleashed. Enlil sought to hush that din. He couldn't. It is only amplified. It saturates the airwaves today. Radio pulses, TV broadcasts, web flows, orbital links, an unending, ballooning uproar of mortal ingenuity, drive, and yearning beaming from our planet into the void. Should the Anunnaki lurk anywhere attuned to it, the racket must overwhelm. Now pause to reflect on how Mesopotamian deluge lore illuminates ecological disasters and shared recollections, linking crucially to both empirical data and the Genesis myth. The deluge in the Atrahasis epic transcends mere godly retribution. It's a chronicle of ecological havoc too. And solid geologic proof backs up massive inundations in ancient Mesopotamia. The stretch between the Tigris and Euphrates forms a wide, low-lying alluvial plain, scant feet above the waves in spots, vulnerable to ruinous overflows during river surges. Thick flood layers appear at various dig sites in southern Iraq, like Kish, Shurupak, and Ur, though from varied eras and not one all-encompassing cataclysm. Shurupak, today's Tel Farah, is key in the Sumerian king list, listed as the final seat of rule pre-flood. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim hails from Shurupak. Digs there uncovered a major flood layer around 2900 BCE. Though not worldwide, it could have razed several settlements and claimed countless lives, a trauma grand enough to echo in legends for ages. Whether these Mesopotamian flood tales echo real happenings has sparked debate since Assyriology's dawn. In 1997, scholars William Ryan and Walter Pittman suggested that ancient flood legends could stem from a massive inundation of the Black Sea region circa 5600 BCE. They argued that surging waters from the Mediterranean breached the Bosporus Strait, swiftly overwhelming a vast freshwater lake and forcing inhabitants to flee, carrying tales of the catastrophe as they spread out. While this hypothesis sparks ongoing debate, it highlights how seismic upheavals might linger in collective folklore across millennia. For our purposes, the key connection lies in linking the deluge to the so-called genetic flaw. Within the Atrahasis tale, the inundation arises straight from this flaw. Humans multiplied excessively, grew boisterous and skilled beyond measure due to an overdose of intellect. The deities unleashed the flood to wipe the slate clean, erasing their flawed invention and rebooting the project. Yet the invention endured. That same unruly smarts enabled Atrahasis to construct a vessel, foresee the calamity, and safeguard existence via strategy and foresight. Herein lies a deep revelation. The trait turning humans into a nuisance also transformed them into resilient beings. The very cognition that irked the gods with its clamor birthed the vision to evade their wrath. Thus, the genetic flaw embodied both affliction and remedy. It sparked our woes and engineered our salvation. This dynamic echoes across the ages of civilization. Our cleverness spawns crises like contamination, armaments, ecological ruin, societal divides, and the perils of machine learning. Yet it also forges remedies, breakthroughs in healthcare, farming techniques, ecological studies, global partnerships, and moral codes to oversee our inventions. The genetic legacy stands as our profoundest weakness and mightiest asset. The Mesopotamian deluge story grasped this paradox. Post-flood, Enlil rages upon learning Atrahasis endured, but Enki counters that such persistence proved essential and beneficial, ultimately swaying even Enlil to concede that total annihilation of humankind was unfeasible and unwise. The ensuing pact, with curbs alongside safeguards, signals a grown-up acceptance that the genetic flaw defies reversal. It demands stewardship alone. Our era holds a parallel wisdom. We can't retract the acuity bestowed by evolution deities or whichever origin you favor, nor can we opt for diminished skill, ingenuity, or inquiry. The genetic flaw endures indelibly, woven into our genetic code, our neural wiring, and each idea or query we entertain. Instead, we must guide it prudently, embracing its potency and perils, crafting organizations and principles that amplify its upsides while curbing its downsides. The ancients channeled this via sacred sites and monarchies. Today, we rely on charters and tribunals, research bodies and moral directives, electoral systems and treaties. Over 4 millennia, the tools have evolved, but the core dilemma persists: how to rule a race whose intellect outpaces any control mechanism. As the old writings imply, full containment eludes us. We devise frameworks to direct that intellect toward fruitful ends. We instill standards to deter ruinous uses. We cultivate customs prizing sagacity with prowess. Still, we must acknowledge the genetic flaw's tendency to overflow constraints that human wit will perpetually astonish, defy, and sometimes alarm the very safeguards we erect. Such is the essence of this endowment: wild, erratic, hazardous, and utterly invaluable, the power to reason, marvel, innovate, interrogate. This, the Sumerians claimed, was the divine infusion into mortal form that later alarmed the immortals. Their apprehension was justified, not from inherent malice, but from its boundlessness. No frontier it won't breach, no enigma it won't unravel, no restraint it won't test. The genetic flaw defines us, all of us. Every soul through history harbors that celestial spark blended into primordial earth. Each notion you've pondered, each puzzle you've posed, each vision you've chased embodies that primal boon, that primal misstep, that primal flame meant never to flare so fiercely. And it burns on undimmed. The genetic flaw's tale carries an ethical layer we haven't delved deeply, one that echoes loudly in today's moral clashes. The Atrahasis saga poses a weighty ethical dilemma. If beings endowed with sentience and awareness are brought into existence, does the Creator possess the authority to eliminate them simply because they deviate from the planned behavior? Responses to this query vary sharply according to the deity in question within the narrative. Enlil affirms it unequivocally. The Maker holds dominion over the made, and if the entity proves troublesome, the Maker may rightfully dismantle it. Enki counters with a firm rejection. Once awareness is granted, the entity gains an intrinsic worth beyond mere functionality, rendering its destruction unjustifiable, regardless of the disruptions it causes. For the Sumerians, this wasn't mere theoretical pondering. It mirrored the harsh truths of their societal framework, including entrenched slavery, where monarchs wielded absolute control over life and death for their populace. and the dynamic between leaders and followers directly echoed that of divinities and mortals, thus pondering a creator's prerogative to eradicate a aware creation paralleled inquiries into a ruler's license to eliminate subjects or a slaveholder's to dispose of enslaved people. The ancient writings offer no unified resolution. Instead, they illuminate the inherent conflict. Enlil's stance carries a certain pragmatism. If an entity is crafted for a defined role and falters in fulfilling it, discarding it seems a logical step. Yet Enki's view holds equal merit. Sentience alters the dynamic entirely. An entity capable of cognition, emotion, pain, aspiration, imagination, and inquiry differs profoundly from a malfunctioning implement. A faulty tool can be discarded without qualms, but ethically jettisoning a being that demands reasons for the act is untenable. This very ethical strife confronts us in modern contexts, from artificial intelligence to genetic modification and beyond. Any innovation nearing the genesis of aware or partially aware entities. As we engineer AI frameworks, are we entitled to deactivate them if they stray from projections? Should we someday forge genuinely sentient artificial life, must we safeguard it, even amid the inconveniences it brings? In this regard, the Mesopotamian accounts were remarkably prescient, some 4,000 years in advance, pinpointing the core moral quandary of fabrication long before our technologies caught up to embody it. The genetic flaw extended beyond technical mishaps. It embodied an ethical crisis that even the mighty gods failed to untangle. Enlil pursued a forceful tactic: annihilate what defies mastery. It fell short. The created proved too hardy, too astute, too resolute in endurance. Enki opted for guardianship. Shield the created, aid its persistence, and aspire toward mutual adjustment. This partially succeeded, yet demanded ongoing concessions, ceaseless watchfulness, and lingering unease over the created's potential actions. No strategy proved wholly adequate. Neither deity grasped the full solution, just as we lack one today. The moral inquiries sparked by the Genesis story linger unresolved after 4,000 years. If parallels hold, they've intensified in relevance as humanity's inventive prowess nears the godlike feats depicted in those tales. Before delving fully into the concluding sections, one more element warrants attention: the Mesopotamian conception of language and its ties to the creation story. In Sumerian worldview, language transcended mere exchange of ideas. It constituted a primal creative energy. The notion of Nam Shub, the uttered decree that manifests existence, reveals how the Sumerians perceived language as a generative force. A divine utterance brings entities into reality. A bestowed name forges essence. An inscribed term ensures endurance. This linguistic philosophy interlinks vitally with the creation account. The genetic anomaly concerns not vague intellect, but the paramount faculty that intellect unleashes: mastery of language. Through language, humans label phenomena, organize the cosmos, invent intangible ideas, deliberate on non-material matters, anticipate tomorrow, recall yesterday, and impart knowledge to peers. It serves as the primary channel for the genetic anomaly's fullest manifestation. Consider language's potentials. It lets one depict the unseen, conjure the non-existent, strategize the unrealized, influence reluctant actions, fabricate deceptions, spawn imagined worlds confined to listeners' thoughts, enact regulations that invisibly shape conduct, craft praises for deities, beneficial to them, or voice grievances against those deities, far less so. The Tower of Babel tale overtly links language to godly apprehension as the divinities disperse humankind and muddle tongues precisely to thwart the unified efforts that linguistic coordination facilitates. A unified tongue empowers folks to team up, strategize jointly, construct collaboratively, and invent feats beyond any lone person's reach. It's the amplifier of human potential, converting solitary smarts into group genius. And that group genius is precisely what terrified the deities. An isolated human bearing the genetic flaw is containable. A lone thinker amid hordes, one who probes, ponders, and now and then defies the powers that be. Yet millions united by a shared dialect, exchanging insights, advancing mutual breakthroughs, and aligning their labors for collective aims. That spells a society. That's peril. That's the clamor Enlil couldn't ignore in his slumber. The twist lies in how the Sumerians, authors of these tales cautioning against the perils of unity and speech, embodied the very force their stories decried. They formed a community boasting a communal idiom, a script for recording, a reservoir of collective wisdom, and frameworks to rally thousands for unified purposes. They stood as vivid evidence that the genetic mishap had wrought the very outcome the gods dreaded. Entities capable of partnering, conversing, and innovating at levels surpassing personal limits. And the ultimate twist, committing the Genesis tale to script, capturing in words the divine dread of linguistic might, is itself a manifestation of the prowess the gods sought to curb. The Sumerians harnessed intellect meant solely for toil to craft writings that chronicled the deity's bid to constrain that intellect. The created employed its illicit talents to chronicle the creator's resistance to those talents. It's a conundrum fit for the shrewd deity Enki. Those irregular cuneiform slabs safeguarding these accounts serve, in a way, as tributes to the genetic flaw. Everyone captures an instance where a person redirected cognition designed for dredging waterways to imprint significance onto mud. Each slab embodies resistance, a small uprising against humanity's prescribed bounds. Together, the myriad thousands, enduring through time, signify an unintended legacy for the Anunnaki, one they neither foresaw nor could master. A realm of significance, a society erected not on godly decrees, but on mortal inquisitiveness. A domain molded not by divine desires, but by human inquiries. That's the true genetic flaw. Not the intellect per se, but its achievements, once granted a channel for articulation, bestow intellect with speech, and it spawns poetry. With numerals, it births calculation. With scrutiny, it yields inquiry. With fancy, it forges aesthetics. With duration, it erects societies. With ample duration, it engenders all. The gods bestowed the intellect. Humanity devised the speech. The aftermath unfolds as chronicle. 4 millennia of it, etched on clay, on reeds, on hides, on sheets, on chips. Every substrate unlocks fresh manifestations of that core aptitude, that genetic anomaly, that forbidden glow never intended to flare so fiercely, so enduringly, or with such boundless ingenuity. Darkness thickens further. No matter your spot or the clock's grip, antiquity envelops you like deposited layers, like the tiers of a mound where societies layer atop predecessors' remnants. Consider the lineage delivering this account to you this evening. An ancient Mesopotamian copyist perched in a sanctuary academy's enclosure duplicates the Atrahasis saga from a prior slab. The slab resides in an archive. The archive perishes in flames as raiders overrun the metropolis. The slab vanishes under debris. Ages elapse. Eons elapse. An excavator sifts the debris and unearths the slab. An expert unravels the inscription. A linguist converts the phrases to modern tongue. An investigator peruses the rendition, linking it to kindred documents, to Diggs' yields, to contemporary revelations. And so, those primordial phrases, incised by a rush tool into damp earth 4 millennia past, now touch you via waves, via the innovations born of the genetic mishap, via the sequence of wonder, safeguarding, and conveyance, sparked when the initial mortal-eyed existence and queried, what makes this function? Each connection in that sequence was hammered by the trait the gods instilled in us, then recoiled from. Each stride from earthen slab to the gadget, now conveying my narration to you, embodies the continuous outpouring of the sacred cognition blended into mortal form at our tale's dawn. The Sumerians have vanished. The Babylonians have vanished. The Assyrians have vanished. Their idioms are extinct. Their deities receive no homage. Their metropolises are mere heaps of earth in a terrain utterly transformed. The wetlands that shaped southern Mesopotamia have been drained, refilled, and drained once more. The waterways have altered their paths. The shoreline itself has shifted, with the Persian Gulf pulling back and the river mouths pushing forward. Yet the tales endure. The inquiries persist. The sense of wonder lingers. That so-called genetic flaw, assuming it truly was one, keeps manifesting in research facilities, archives, classrooms, and everyday chats between folks seeking to make sense of their surroundings. The celestial map the Sumerians mapped out still arches above, even if the star patterns have drifted a bit across the ages from the equinox's precession. The north-pointing star of their era differs from ours today. The skies evolve gradually, almost unnoticeably, yet without fail. Not even the realm of the divine stays fixed, but those core inquiries do. From whence do we originate? What purpose do we serve? To what heights can we ascend? What dangers should we dread? Such riddles fill the accounts of Genesis. Every culture on earth has pondered them in its unique voice. They're the same ones you'll mull over as slumber claims you this evening. The Anunnaki fashioned creatures to excavate channels. Those same creatures came to question the very fabric of reality. That could mark the grandest blunder in all of cosmic history, or its crowning achievement. Perhaps the two at once. Perhaps that's the essence. Perhaps the pull between destiny and possibility, between our intended role and our boundless reach, forms the heart of what it means to be human. The waterways demand maintenance. The labor persists. Yet, amid our toil, we ponder, we imagine, we stretch toward horizons past the everyday, the useful, the essential. We seek insight, elegance, significance, the cosmos itself. That's the inherited imperfection, and as you drift off tonight, it hums along undimmed. Your mind, that remarkable structure housing 86 billion nerve cells, woven into networks of breathtaking intricacy, never fully rests during repose. It sifts through the day's encounters. It solidifies recollections. It conjures visions. Even in rest, the intellect bestowed by the gods presses on, innovating, venturing into the profound enigma of awareness, the most enigmatic realm perhaps imaginable. Rest deeply. Envision ancient Mesopotamia with stepped pyramids emerging from the flatlands. Imagine ritualists climbing those tiers to connect with deities who might or might not have attended. Picture the Tigris in the dying light. Amber glow on tawny streams, vessels of woven reeds slipping by barriers of baked earth. See the scriptoriums where young ones master letters, tiny resolute fingers etching wedges into soft clay, launching a quest for wisdom that endures 4,000 years and beyond. Visualize Enki, the shrewd deity, who crafted us yet shielded us from his peers. Conjure Ninhursag, the goddess of birth, molding earth into our forms, infusing vitality into lifeless forms. igniting a sequence of happenings that would eclipse the immortals. Recall the anonymous writer who first inscribed the myth of beginnings, embedding our lineage's narrative in damp tablet and baking it under Babylonian rays, safeguarding it through epochs. Ponder the genetic flaw, the exquisite, awful, splendid oversight that forged our essence, the flame not destined to blaze so fiercely, the doubt not meant to arise, the invention not supposed to eclipse its makers. And, come morning, hold on to a fragment of that timeless awe. View your surroundings as a kind born for a single task, yet electing a grander one. A lineage bearing godly essence in fragile form. A breed the divinities justly dreaded. Sleep soundly. The echoes of antiquity guard your rest. The inscribed stones rest secure in their displays. The heavens trace routes Babylonian stargazers first traced. The currents rush seaward as they did long before any eyes beheld them. And in that twilight zone twixt dream and dawn, the primordial narrative unfolds anew, the tale of origins, of trepidation, of a race crafted to labor and opting to ascend. Drift off peacefully. The genetic flaw will stand vigil through the dark hours. It ever has. It ever shall. Good night.